Hello, and welcome along to this video, which is a part of the series of videos on the initial setup and configuration of the Chocolatey Quick Deployment environment as version 2 of QDE. So far we have installed the base image into VMware Fusion running on my Mac here. We have done the initial configuration and setup of the QDE components. We've done the initial setup and configuration of Nexus. We have done the initial setup and configuration of Jenkins. So what's left is the initial setup and configuration of CCM. So this is maybe a little bit big for what we're trying to show here. So let's just make that a little bit smaller. So this video is focusing on CCM, Chocolatey Central Management. So the QDE environment ships with version 0.3.0 of CCM. So that includes the ability to do deployments on client machines from QDE. So what we're going to look at here is the initial setup that needs to be done. So the initial username and password of the CCM admin user is listed in the README on the QDE desktop. So from here we can do, let's log in with CCM admin and then just paste in that password. So what will be needed is to change that password. So we will be prompted to do that. So I'm going to click never here, and I'm going to do a password that I will remember, and I'm going to click submit. And that is the username and password for the default user changed. And then there's one other piece of configuration, or potentially multiple pieces of configuration you need to do based on your setup. So the first thing would be regarding SMTP settings. So by default, CCM will attempt to send emails when certain things happen. So when you create a new user registers on the system, or when a request for a password reminder, etc., comes out. So if an SMTP server isn't configured, it will cause an error to appear when the action that it is invoked from doesn't work. Okay, so as of right now, the default configuration is expecting that there will be an SMTP server running on port 25 on this local machine that CCM is running on. That's likely not going to be the case. So I would invite you to put in the credentials that are correct for your SMTP server that you want to use. Save all those changes, click save, and then send test email to make sure that that works. Obviously, I can't tell you what those settings are in your environment, but once they're all set up and saved, you should be able to send the test email to make sure that it's relaying correctly. The other one that may come into play is with regard to how you want users to authenticate. By default, the username and passwords are stored and verified within the CCM database itself. If you do want to integrate with LDAP, Active Directory, you can click the Enable LDAP Authentication here and then provide the domain name, username and password for the user that will be allowed to make those LDAP authentication requests on behalf of CCM. So those are the main pieces of configuration that you may want to look into for the initial setup of CCM. But with those things in place, we should be in a position where we can start to enroll new machines into CCM and then creating deployments from CCM onto those machines as well. So for now, that's it. That's all we had to cover in this video. Just a quick sanity check. The other part that's mentioned here, it's not specific to CCM, but there is mention of firewall ports. So by default, these are the firewall ports that will need to be enabled in your environment so that all communication to and from the QDE component is able to be achieved here. The other part of the documentation is about browser configurations. So you'll have seen throughout these videos I've been using Chrome. So there's some considerations here if you are using Firefox. And the other part down here, which I've been doing as we've been going through it, is to change the API key for each of the components. So we changed the API key when we signed into Nexus initially. We changed the API key that it used, and then we changed the API key that was used in the Jenkins jobs. The one piece that's left to do would be to change the API key for Chocolatey itself. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy this, and the one piece of information that's in here that may have changed, and there's a note here about it, is that the server name, if you change the server name, you will need to modify that as well. So I'm just going to take this into my notepad, I'm going to paste it, and then I'm going to take this API key and replace the templated version there. And I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to run that in my shell. And all that's doing is updating the API key that Chocolatey itself persists for this Chocolatey internal repository. So I'll be able to now push packages into that repository using that API key. So this piece about the updating the pre-configured jobs, we've already did that in a previous video. And the next step will be to install and configure Chocolatey on clients. So that's where we're going to come back to in the next video. Thank you very much.